Hello YouTube, this is Genius in Exile. I am actually getting ready to do some Friday night canning meatballs. So I'm doing two batches. I have 5 pounds of ground beef right here. This is 80/20. I like that a lot more because there's less fat in it and it seems to last better and doesn't get quite as soft. And in here I have my dehydrated mushrooms, my dehydrated onions, some chicken bouillon, some hamburger deluxe. Thank you, Bear. Some garlic and oregano and adobo seasoning, and let's see, I'm trying to think what else, a little bit of fajita seasoning and some red pepper flakes and some nature seasoning. It's kind of like a Mrs. Dash. It's actually pretty nice. I have my canning jars ready to go, canner all ready, and my rings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make meatballs, and I'm going to put them on these baking sheets on parchment paper. I'm going to kind of catch the grease and get it away from them into so they don't stick. And I'm actually going to oven roast them at a high temperature so it sears the outside. Some people like to do them raw, and they work fine. They work actually very nicely. They come up very tender. But I thought I would try it this way this time. So I'm going to bake these in the oven until they get nice and brown, and then I'll pack them away. So I'm going to add all my seasonings, and this is just for the 5-pound batch I have here. I actually have some more. I'm going to do about 10 pounds tonight. So I'll get back to you when I have the meatballs made. Alright, so I'm still mixing up the ground beef. I actually ended up adding 2 more tablespoons of Italian seasoning, and then I decided to add some smoked salt to this. So I'm actually using the big pan method that Paula, Ellen 2045, uses, because it's so much easier than using a bowl, because it's kind of hard to get around to it. But this way, it's nice and spread out instead of having to worry about over mixing your meat, which will make it tough. You can actually mix it very little and make sure that you get all the seasonings mixed up in there. So I'm going to start making meatballs in just a minute. Also adding some of the smoked salt I made. This is Himalayan pink salt and kosher and Hawaiian lava salt. And what I did is I made a fire in the smoker, and on top of the flames, or on top of the coals, I put some mesquite chips that I soaked for a few hours, and it made a really nice smoky flavor. And I used a spatter guard, one of those guards that you put over the frying pan when you make bacon, and I spread the salt out on there, and I smoked it for probably about an hour and a half, and it is just wonderful. If you don't have time to go out to the grill, or it's a rainy day and you can't grill your meat, add a little bit of this on there, and it makes the most wonderful smoky flavor, and I can smell it now. These are going to be wonderful. So that's all the salt I'm going to put in there. This is 5 pounds of meat, but you don't want it to be incredibly salty. I'm just adding enough to make it really nice and add a nice smoky flavor to it. And Paula, thank you. This way of mixing it up is so much easier. I have to admit, I was one of the bowl people, but hopefully we'll have some converts after watching this video. So I'm making meatballs that aren't really big. You need to try to make sure that you make them uniform size, because if you're going to bake them in the oven using this way, this method, you want to make sure they cook pretty evenly. And I'm not going to cook them 100%. I really just want to get them nice and browned in the oven so they stay a little bit firmer in the jar. Okay, so I'm still rolling meatballs. I've got them spaced not real far apart, probably about a ½ an inch. You don't need that much room. You kind of want to get some of the fat out of it. That's another reason I want to put them in the oven, to get some fat out, because if the fat goes up around the rim of your jar, it'll mess with your seal. And you don't want to do all this for nothing. So I'm trying to get more fat out and get a nice seared flavor. So coupled with that smoked salt, which are going to be really good. So what I'm going to do is put these in the oven at 400 degrees, and I'll take them out when they're nice and brown. That'll probably be about 35-40 minutes. They're going to be so good and so firm. So I'll get back to you when I'm done making all the meatballs. Okay, so serious change in strategy. I thought I was going to be cute and Betty Crocker and space them all apart, but I realized that this is 5 pounds. I'm doing 10 pounds of ground beef, meatballs, and I only have 2 pans. And I only have room in my oven for 2 pans, and I don't want to roast them all night, and then I still have to do the 90 minutes of canning, so I packed them up pretty tight. So I've got my other batch here. First of all, that is just funny. Second of all, I'm going to season these the exact same way and fill up that pan full of meatballs, and then I'll get them in the oven. Okay, so I finished the meatballs. Hubby asked me if I would save some so he can make sloppy joes. So I probably could have ended up spreading them out a little bit more. So I'm going to put these in the oven. Set at 400. I don't know if you can see that, but you know what 400 looks like. You're smart. There we go. There it goes. Ooh, don't roll off. There we go. All right, so we'll come back and visit them in about 35 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes, and they are looking pretty good. They're not quite as brown as I'd like them, but you can hear them sizzling. Almost there. Okay, so I just took my meatballs out of the oven, and they look pretty good. They're nice and brown, still very tender. They're all kind of over to one side because I was dumping the grease out, but wanted to show you. So next, I'll be putting them in the jars, and I'll be covering them in some broth, because when you pack cooked meat, you have to pack them in liquid, and then I'll pressure can them for 90 minutes at 10 pounds of pressure. So I'll come back when I get these off the tray and start packing them in jars. Okay, so I'm getting ready to pack them into jars. I've got my canning funnel here, and I've got my broth. So I pack some into a quart jar, and, oops, need my ladle. And I'm going to spoon this over my meatballs. And what I didn't tell you is I'm actually canning with the gals. So give me just a second, I'll have them say hi. Hi. And here are the girls. I'm canning with Paula and Pet Prepper and Prepper Chickie. And there's me. And they're watching me can the meatballs. Say hi. Oh, Pet went out for a sec, but she's beautiful. Hi. All right, so I'm going to keep packing these away. Yay, it's meatball night. Alrighty, so I'm going to finish packing up my meatballs and get them in the canner. Okay, so I've got my meatballs packed up. I've got the broth over them. I've wiped off all the rims. Now I'm going to put the tops on the jars. I love doing this one-handed. Should be an Olympic event. There we go. And try to knock it off. So I'll get all these put on, and I will come back when I get them in the canner. Okay, so my pressure canner is done. I did it at 10 pounds of pressure for 90 minutes, and it is down to 0. So I'm going to take off the weight. Now, when your timer is done, you don't actually take the weight off because it'll depressurize too quickly. You may blow out a jar. So you actually just want to turn off the heat and let it depressurize naturally. So now that it's at 0, I'm going to unscrew these locks and open it away from me because it's going to be very hot, and we'll see how they turn out. Okay, so I got the top off, and let's see. Ooh, turned out very nice. Still very, very, very hot. I have some over here. I'm also doing my grape jelly. So let's get these out. I'm going to put them on a towel, because you never want to put them on a cold counter, because it's a great way to break your glass. Make sure you don't swing these over your grape jelly either. You get a couple of drops of meat juice in there. You don't want to do that. So, looks like this one lost a fair bit of liquid, but it should be alright. I don't know if you can see this, but they're still boiling. But they turned out nice. So, 10 pounds of ground beef with no addition of eggs or breadcrumbs turned out 4 quart jars of very nice meatballs. And if you remember earlier, they were nice and brown when I took them off the sheet pan to put them in the jar. They've actually kind of lost that brown, but I think it went into the liquid that I put them in, so that ought to taste really good. So now what I'm going to do is leave them here and just let them cool overnight, make sure there's no draft. And in the morning I'll take off the rings and I'll wash the jars in hot soapy water, label them, put the rings back on, and put them away. With food, you want to keep it away from light and heat in a nice dry place. I do keep the rings on because I keep these in a box on a shelf, and I don't think there's enough humidity to really bother them, and I kind of like not having to put rings on my jars if I need to transport them anywhere. This one's really going crazy. Alrighty, so we can meatballs on a Friday night. Wow, they're really whistling. I don't know if you can hear that. So there you go. That's how you can meatballs. Thank you, and prep honestly. Night.